Good morning, Phil here. Hope you're all doing all right and having a good week so far. So today we're going to carry on thinking about the media and how it influences what we think about what's going on in the world. So just a quick reminder, last time we looked at the three kind of main categories of media that we get. So broadcast media, print media, and new media. Today we're going to focus on just one of those. If you weren't online for the last lesson, can you leave this one for now and go back and look up in the team to the last post and have a go at doing that today so that everyone has done that bit of an introduction. I want to try and get us to a point where we're all sort of at the same place. Okay, so today, so this would be our starter activity if we were in class, but I'll just kind of talk you through it. So remember those three different categories of the media. This one here has three examples of broadcast media. So we've got BBC News, Channel 4 News, and Sky News. But then we've also got over here the Telegraph newspaper. Okay, so the odd one out in this one is even though Sky News is on a phone, it's still Sky News, it's still a television broadcaster, whereas the Telegraph is a newspaper. So that's the odd one out in that one. Okay. Next one, this one's maybe a bit easier. So we've got the Financial Times, which is obviously a newspaper. Paisley Daily Express, you've had your chips, classic Paisley Daily Express headline there. That's a newspaper. The Daily Mail is a newspaper, even though it's on a phone, it's still a newspaper. But Greg James there from BBC Radio 1, the radio is part of broadcast media. Television, radio is broadcast media. So that is the odd one out. Okay? You'll get the hang of this. So today's learning intentions, we're going to just think a little bit more about what broadcast media is. And the main thing, these questions when they're in your National 5 exam are about the influence of the media. So although you need to know what the media is to begin with, the question will always be, how does the media influence politics in some way? Or why do political parties use the media? So that's what we're going to think about today is broadcast law with regard to it being impartial. Okay? So, just a quick reminder of what broadcast media actually is. Hopefully you'll remember this from the last lesson, but it's anything that you see or hear on the television or the radio, or anything that's produced by those same organisations anywhere else. So, think of the biggest broadcaster in the UK is the BBC. Okay, that's a broadcaster that we all, or your parents, pay a license fee to be able to watch for free. That's why you don't get television adverts on the BBC, because we pay a kind of tax to watch it. You've also got Channel 4, ITV or STV as it is in Scotland, Sky, Channel 5, and a whole load of other channels as well. But those are the kind of main channels you get. Then you've got the radio stations as well, so all the BBC radio stations, Clyde One, Capital, whatever it is you listen to, those are all broadcasters. Okay, but remember, it doesn't always mean sitting in front of the television watching the news like Homer Simpson here. It could mean you're looking at an article on the BBC News website, or you follow Sky News on Twitter. That all counts as broadcast media because it's produced by these organisations. Okay? So, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but the important thing you need to know is that by law, in this country, it's not the same in America or other countries, but in this country, broadcasters have to be neutral when it comes to covering politics. Actually, when it comes to covering most issues, they've got to present balanced reporting. So it means they're not allowed to favour one political party over another. So they're supposed to show balance whenever they're reporting on a story. So say, here's an example. If statistics came out that said Scottish education wasn't doing so well, the STV would obviously go to the SNP. They are the party that's in government, and they would ask them for a quote. But then they'd also maybe go to the main opposition party, which in Scotland is the Conservatives, and they'd maybe say, well, what do you think? The Conservatives would criticise the government, the SNP would obviously defend the government because they are the government, and then you get a bit of balance in the reporting. So you would never get a piece of journalism that only has one side of the article on broadcast media. So I'm going to show you an example of balanced coverage. This is a wee bit old now. It's from a couple of years ago, but it's during an election campaign, and it shows you the leader of the Labour Party at the time, Jeremy Corbyn, and I think it's got Theresa May in it as well, who was Prime Minister at the time. But it's a good example of how in one news report, the journalist brings in lots of different opinions to try and balance the story. Okay, so he's not presenting one side of the story, he's letting politicians from all sides tell their side of the story. So just watch this clip, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Jeremy Corbyn was in Keswick today, but he was supposed to be in the rather more exotic Ghana next week on an official visit. That's
Okay, so I think that's a particularly good example from Sky News of trying to get all the different political perspectives into one report. So you saw three different political parties talking about it. You also saw an independent MP talking about it, and then at the end, the journalist summed it all up, bringing in all those different perspectives as well. So that's an example of balanced coverage. I'm not going to show you this one because the clip goes on for quite a while, but there is a bit of an issue with the idea that broadcasters have to provide balanced coverage because they can sometimes take it too far. So this was a clip that was about climate change, and it was a piece of reporting that had scientists on it talking about climate change, and then it had a climate change denier on it talking about how he believed that climate change wasn't really happening. Now, this is one of these issues where there doesn't need to be balance in this, because the overwhelming consensus is that climate change is happening. It's a real thing, and it's caused by decisions that are made by us. So there's actually no need for this to be balanced. But the BBC sometimes feels the need to bring in someone who's against an issue, even if there is consensus on it. So sometimes that's quite controversial. This is another example. Nicola Sturgeon was going to be speaking at an event in Edinburgh. This is from a couple of years ago. And the BBC invited someone called Steve Bannon, who was an advisor to Donald Trump. Very, very controversial character, says a lot of controversial things. I think probably deliberately, but Nicola Sturgeon said, well, I'm not going to take part in this because actually he has, well, she says, far-right racist views. The BBC's view was, well, in order to provide balance, we should invite this person, Steve Bannon, to speak. But again, there's a lot of argument there about, well, does that make it balanced? Is that fair? So balance coverage sometimes is quite complicated. So in terms of impact on our politics, the main aim of the broadcast media is to inform us. That's a really important phrase for you to remember. It informs us of what's going on so that we can make choices at election time, or so we know what's happening with issues like Brexit or coronavirus or whatever it might be. And also, even though you might not sit down and watch the news every day, the TV is still the most popular form of media for the majority of the country. Most voters will watch the news at some point, or will watch television at some point, will see politicians on the television. So it's the most popular form of media. So politicians will go out of their way to do interviews, to get onto the television as much as they possibly can, because one interview could reach millions of people all at the same time. So that's a really good way for politicians to get their message out. The one thing, we'll come back to this because we're going to watch these in a future lesson, but the one time that broadcast media is allowed to be biased is, in this country, it's illegal for political parties to advertise on television. You can't do it. So in America, they spend millions of dollars on television advertising. Here, you can't do that. No matter how much money you want to spend, you can't get on the television. But the government allows each political party to make, I think it's about maybe 2 minutes before an election, you're allowed a 2-minute advertisement on the television called a party political broadcast or a party election broadcast. And again, these reach millions of people, so political parties spend a long time producing these. Okay, today's task, I'll put links to these below. I want you to watch a full episode of the news. So last night's news, if possible, so 10 o'clock news on the BBC or on ITV, or Channel 4 News, which I think is on at 7 o'clock, but I'll post the links so you can watch yesterday's editions. At National 5, you really should be getting into the habit of watching the news a few times a week. It's good to get into the habit of maybe following the BBC News on Twitter, or if you use Snapchat, follow Sky News, does a lot on Snapchat, so maybe follow them. Try and keep up with the news. That's really, really important for you. Okay? And as you're watching it, I want you to think about how the broadcaster tries to bring balance into their reporting. A lot of the news just now is obviously about coronavirus, so it's not quite so political. But yesterday, for example, there was a lot of politics about schools in England, so have a think about that. And then pick just one report from the programme you were watching and write a paragraph about it and explain how the journalist got that issue across to you and what you learned about it. Okay? I'm going to school today, so I'm not going to be in front of my computer for the whole day. So if you've got any issues, post them in the team, but I might not be able to reply straight away because I've got to go into school. Okay? Have a great day and a really good weekend, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye.